I'm not claiming to have found any magical method or miracle cure. I'm just talking about pure common sense of how to learn French in a sort of underground sub-society alternative route type of way, which, as far as I see, is much more bloody effective than what I usually see. Seriously, he started in April, he studied alone until the month of June, started speaking to me in February. It's now June, I'm talking at full top speed with him, natural speed. How do you explain that? How do we explain that? I wanted to express something a bit different in this video. I've not made a script for it. It's going to be a bit different from what I usually talk about. I usually come well prepared to share a definite idea in these videos, and so I'm loosely calling this video The Missing Language Level. So it all started this morning. In fact, I did a lesson with a face-to-face class with a student. He's 50 plus. He started on my program on the 7th of April, a little over a year ago, 7th of April, so it's almost the 7th of June, so that would be a year and 2 months. And so here we are talking in very adult-like terms about banking problems, about family problems, and we, at the end of it, after our full hour talking, we marveled at how this. We marveled at several things, and it's almost like there's a missing term. Becoming the French language, claiming it as your own, claiming it for yourself, becoming a speaker, a user of the French language, the French communication system, not being a participant, really becoming that French language. And my student was looking for words also to explain this new being, and I think he said something like, well, it's a bit corny to say I've transformed, I've become a new person, because he's not quite become a new person, but I see what he means. I see what he's trying to express. And the way I see French taught, or just generally languages, I feel that they encourage people, or at least the system seems structured in such a way that people become participants rather than claimers. You know, you participate in French, or you participate in Spanish or English, or although English is the exception. Shut up, you noisy bird. Do you mind? You know, people pursue these levels, these absurd language levels. You buy a textbook to be a B1, a B2 and whatnot, but there's a completely different way of doing it. Is centering on yourself and saying, okay, who am I? What do I want to say? And it's almost like a sub-society, a sub-way of learning. There's the official way of learning, everything you've ever seen, the games, the textbooks, I don't know what people do. And then there's the sub-way of learning. It's the way I do things. You slash the French language in two parts. There's the vocabulary over here, and there's the mechanics over there. So there's two halves. Don't worry about the vocabulary. If you don't know a word, you'll learn it later. That's not a problem. So vocabulary, nouns and all that, and to a lesser extent adjectives or specialized verbs, these are over here. But what you need is over here in this column, the mechanics of French. And on my program you'll see that there's 85 lessons towards French. After these 85 or so lessons I don't have anything to teach you, or very little, because essentially that's all the mechanics of French you would ever need to express what you want. Very grown-up like conversations. It was funny because I actually used the term grown up. There was no other term, there was no other word to say. We are talking about grown-up subjects with precision, with the necessary precision. There's a term lacking. It's nothing to do with B2, B1, C1, whatever. That's something else. So bringing people into the Frenchness, claiming it as a skill, being a speaker of French, being a comfortable speaker of French, knowing the tools to express what you want. Nothing to do with language levels, nothing to do with immigration tests, nothing to do with textbooks. So I've seen it done before, I have done it before, and again with this student today. And there's a sort of a magic that occurs, I want to call it, it's corny, isn't it? A sort of a magic, or at least an unexplained process by which the brain puts all the parts together, and all of a sudden there's there's a quick acceleration. All of a sudden it all makes sense, it all falls into place. And as soon as he said his two first sentences today, I thought, oh wow, that was a long sentence, right? So he said a super long thing about his sister with, you know, relative pronouns in there and the right tenses, a reported speech. She told me that she would do this for me. Elle m'a dit qu'elle ferait ceci. Oh yeah, imparfait conditionnel. He has all the tenses right. And I thought, oh dear me, yeah, pronunciation and everything. And I thought, wow, well done. You know, all of a sudden it makes sense. And from one lesson to another, all of a sudden it seems like a student has jumped levels. Something happened during the night. They've studied enough. All of a sudden they jump levels. If your tutor, if your teacher knows his stuff, his or her stuff, they will sense these things. Well, you have to have been a teacher for a number of years to sense these things. You have to sense that, oh, okay, the student's doing this now. Okay, I'm going to raise the conversation. And I did this today, you know. I saw how the student in question started the conversation. I said, okay, well, at that level are we? Bang, you know, you can raise the level, which, of course, I don't see how AI would ever do that, because you can't teach that skill. You have to have been a teacher for a number of years, seen many students, and just sense it, you know, you have to know your own program. I have my own course. You have to know your course. You have to recognize the parts that students are using. You have to say, okay, they know that part very well, and they, you know, how about this and that? And it's also a delight to be able to prompt the student, not correct them, and say, okay, today there was an issue with you know, should and would in English, because I'm also an English teacher, which is why I teach in a bilingual way. I know exactly how English works and what an English speaker is going to do when they approach French and how they think about their own first language. And he wanted to express something about the conditional, and he was using should. Oh, should. I said, yeah. What you're looking for is devoir, must in the conditional. I should, must. In English, of course, it brings in these two weird words, should and would, to do the same. And, you know, I can just prompt the student and say, okay, it's devoir. How would you put must in the conditional? And it took him a while, and look at, yeah, devrait, you know, and I said, yeah, the infinitive afterwards. Yeah, that's right, of course. Yeah, there's an infinitive afterwards. And once you know the mechanics, you know what you're looking to achieve. You know what you're seeking to achieve. You know what an infinitive is. You know what a conditional is. You know what a modal verb is. You have a clear idea of the blocks of French. And this, to me, is a completely different level than what we usually learn. And this notion is so clear in my mind, this alternative way to French, it's so clear in my mind. But is it for everyone? Can everyone do this? Because I was telling the students, because after our class we talked about his amazing step forward, and I said, it's funny because it almost necessitates a stripping of the ego. I don't think everyone's capable of doing that. Admitting your own non-knowledge, I won't use the word ignorance, you don't know, you're ready to be corrected at all times, you're ready to learn, you completely stripped away your ego, you're naked in front of the knowledge, and you say, I don't know, I'm ready to be corrected, I'm ready to be a learner, I'm ready to take this knowledge in and to make it my own. And if you can do that, it works. If you're able to strip away your ego, to become a learner with a capital L, it does work. It does take curiosity, sustained curiosity and interest in French. It does take discipline, and it does take work. As I said, he started on the 7th of April. He did my 20-minute system that, I must say, I'm not saying this out of spite, so many people did and didn't see the interest in. You know, I said, I'll give you a little chunk of my program. For 20 minutes, I'm going to ask you exactly very precise questions, because these are the important things you need to know about French. And this also sort of goes in favor of this idea I have of this alternative way to French. You know, the main parts, the main mechanics, the mechanics of French. I'm going to ask you a very specific question about pronunciation. I'm going to ask you a very specific question about the use of a certain tense. I'm going to test if you actually know it. Knowing as in not knowing the right answer, but do you actually know what you're trying to achieve? Do you actually know why you're using that tense and not that one? that's a completely different understanding. It's almost as if the learner becomes the teacher, like it's a teacher's understanding of French, not as intense, not at that same level, not about becoming an expert in grammar, but it's, in a sense, the student also becomes a type of teacher, and they can teach their own self, and they can self-correct, and they understand actively what they're trying to do. You see, so I'm very excited about this, and I'm very excited to have to have worked with a 50-plus-year-old man who started a year and 2 months ago, who'd effed around with Duolingo, and a few months after that, I still have his notes on my computer, said, okay, this is leading nowhere, time to up my game. By some miracle he found me, and it worked. And he's only started the face-to-face classes, I think it was in November. Yeah, I'm fairly sure it was in November. Was it February? I'm going to check. I'm going to check now. Wow, no, it's even better than I thought, because I'm checking here on my website. So in December, he was still doing, in December 2025, he was still doing the self-learning program. So that was the 20-minute meetups. In January, that's the last time so he actually started in February. So he self-studied from April to February. He studied alone with my course up to the 21st of January, because I saw him, it says here, conditional and passive. I tested him on the conditional and the passive. And so, yeah, I remember he really started in February. February, started face-to-face classes with me. It's June now, I'm talking at normal speed with him. Of course there are words he doesn't catch. Of course, why would he? That's the two columns. There's always going to be a word of vocabulary you don't get. That's not an issue, okay, if you need it, you learn it. But what he does understand is the mechanics, and I can talk with him at normal speed. I just, brought the level up today, as I said. And so I saw him, we've only been doing face-to-face classes for 3 months, and before that he studied alone. Scout's honour, Scout's promise, it is a fact. And so, yeah, that's it, it does work. But for this, I think you have to accept a different definition of language learning, what it's supposed to be, how you can achieve it, and how to go about it. And I'm not claiming to have found any magical method or miracle cure. I'm just talking about pure common sense of how to learn French in a sort of underground sub-society alternative route type of way, which as far as I see is much more bloody effective than what I usually see. Of course he sounds like a beginner, yeah, I'm not saying he's not. Of course he's thinking about his words, of course, but what he's saying is damned impressive, and there's no level for it, there's no level. Tell you this, within 2 years he will be he'll be so comfortable in France, he'll be able to speak with who he wants, express what he wants, which is what you want to achieve. You want to be able to achieve each one of your thoughts, understand other people, and not feel limitations. And that's what we've achieved. It's damned impressive. I'm very happy for him. Congratulations. See you soon. My name is Chris. We are lacking a different term for language levels, an alternative way of thinking about it. That was just about my first video with no preparation. No script, no preparation. Okay, see you very soon. Bye. Find me at OuiCommunicate.com, by the way, if you want to do the same. Thanks for watching.